أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد ومعية محمد. اللهم صل على محمد ووارثي محمد عملا وقولا. Dear brothers, dear sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings hearts and minds together. May this togetherness grow and flourish. We've had enough divisions and we've had enough accusations flirting around. It's time to put an end to all of that and meet with Allah Azza wa Jal and remember in a practical way the character of our dearest Prophet. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him and his. This is an extension of last week's presentation, and I want to say at the beginning, I don't mean to get on anyone's nerves. I don't mean to emotionally hurt anyone. I don't mean to be offensive to anyone who is listening or watching at all. Please, I beg you, don't understand what I am trying to express. Don't understand it as an attack on you, whether you're a Sunni or whether you're a Shi'i, by the way you define yourself. It's just back to basics. And when we go back to basics, we will understand that our strength is eventually in blurring the line between those who say that they are Shi'is and those who say that they are Sunnis. From my limited, I'm just a human being just like you, from my limited lifetime experience, all our problems generate by accentuating the differences between Sunnis and Shi'is. Anyone, I don't care, and I say this and I'm conscious of Allah's presence and I'm conscious of Allah's eventual accountability for what I am saying. He's going to hold me accountable for this, and I'm conscious of that. And I say to you, with this consciousness, that most, if not all, of our problems germinate, they begin. The genesis of them is in accentuating, in emphasizing, in articulating the differences and thus the divisions between Sunnis and Shi'is. This comes from a misunderstanding of who a Sunni is, and it comes from the misunderstanding of who a Shi'i is. Underline those words. So with that as a quick introduction, I can't, as hopefully with Allah's blessings and help, and I mean not to demean anyone by saying this, but I can't understand how someone who labels himself as a Sunni, He says, radiyallahu anhu, about a ruler who kills tens of thousands of Muslims and then who defiles the virginity. His troops defile the virginity of thousands of Muslim women in, of all places, Al-Madinah and Mecca, and who is responsible for policies that victimize thousands, if not tens of thousands, of innocent Muslim children, and whose policies result in a refugee status, the displacement of thousands of Muslims, particularly in the Arabian Peninsula, and who is responsible for catapulting the Kaaba itself. And then some Muslim graduate, some Muslim quote-unquote scholar comes and says, radiyallahu anhu. This is just like saying in today's world, radiyallahu an Salman ibn Abdul Aziz, or radiyallahu an Muhammad ibn Salman, or radiyallahu an Muhammad ibn Zayed, or radiyallahu an Abdul Fattah al-Sisi, or radiyallahu an, and you can go on and on. All of these rulers, with the exception of one or two, all of these rulers fit this description. They have killed, they have caused the displacement of millions of Muslims, innocent men, women, and children, all around the Islamic geography in the world. Notice that the Islamic fiqh terminology is not used in our day. You don't find one scholar ascending the minbar. I mean, you might find one in 1,000, but generally speaking, you won't find these scholars ascending the minbar and using the words radiyallahu anh pertaining to such and such a king or such and such a president. They won't say that using those words, but they will praise in a direct fashion or in an indirect way. They will praise the current rulers, presidents, and kings. They will praise him all the way up so that you understand radiyallahu anhu pertains to these rulers. Radiyallahu anhu, that honorific is deserved by these rulers. There's a hadith for those who belong to reading the past in Sunni books. Though Sunni books of hadith, those, and they don't want to be reminded of this. You know, there's certain hadiths that are in these books of hadith, but no one mentions them, which should be raise some eyebrows. Why? Why are certain hadiths never mentioned? There's a hadith that says, أول من يغير سنتي رجل من بني أمية. The first one who is going to alter or change my sunnah is a man from Bani Umayyah, the descendants of Umayyah. Someone's going to immediately say here, probably, especially if you're coming from a Saudi or establishmentarian sponsored religious or educational institution, saying, I don't think that hadith is sahih. So the first thing that they try to respond to such hadith. Well, for your information, there's a person, his name is Nasr ad-Din al-Albani. He passed away some years ago. But he is considered a person who validates or invalidates hadiths, a contemporary one who does that. He's a muhaddith who studied the hadiths, and then through his study, research, and scrutiny of hadith literature, he will tell you certain hadiths are sahih, valid hadiths, and certain others are less than valid or not valid at all. When it comes to this particular hadith, أول من يغير سنتي رجل من بني أمية الألباني, the Salafi Wahhabi type of muhaddith, says that this hadith is sahih. Okay, alhamdulillah. Now, if that's a hadith sahih, who is this first person from Bani Umayyah, this first man from Bani Umayyah, who is going to change or subvert the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? We have to, in a heart-to-heart way, we have to recognize that many of these individuals, if they are confronted with this type of many of these Islamically religious, scholarly individuals who graduated from places like Dar al-Ulum or Al-Ma'had al-Islami or Al-Kulliya al-Islamiyya or other traditional educational Islamic institutions. These types of individuals, because they have not trained their minds or because they were not taught to train their minds on these types of hadiths. I just brought one example. There are other examples in hadith literature, which hopefully throughout the weeks to come we will quote for you. But they have not been exposed to these types of hadiths, so when they are presented with them, they go into a tailspin of either dismissing the issue or questioning the hadith, or in the best of situations, I would have to look that up and look into it. And the whole issue falls dead there. It doesn't seem like there's a concerted effort in the crowd of scholars and ulama that want to take a critical look at governance in the Muslim world after the Khilafah of the Khulafa and the Imama of the Imams. They just don't want to do that. And sometimes there's a condescending character and behavior by these quote-unquote scholars who have a money trail that can be traced all the way back to petro-affluence, petro-budgets, petro-salaries, sometimes they have a condescending approach that belittles the Muslim public, like no one else understands anything, and they are the final word on everything Islamic. We don't find that we don't find that coming obviously from the Prophet. We don't find that coming from the generation of the Prophet. We don't find that coming from dedicated ulama and fuqaha. But we find that in today's, unfortunately, sometimes there's an inferiority complex at work here. Don't use your emotionalism, stay as stoic as you can and observe these types of public speakers very calmly, but with a working mind and with a pulsing heart. Observe them, and you will detect, and you have to feel sorry for some of them, because truth be said, some of these who became quote unquote ulama, they could not be accepted into medical schools or into different science departments at universities, and so they found their way to Islamic studies, and they carry within them some type of resentment. They should not, and I'm not saying all of them, I'm saying some of them. So you have to help them. Yes, you, the average Muslim, you and me, the average Muslims, we have to help these types of ulama. We cannot be on a shaitan's side in demeaning them. We have to diagnose their insufficiencies or their deficiencies. We have to diagnose those and help them out. We're in this all together. And sometimes some of them, when you begin to present them with these solid facts of history, coming from what they consider to be sahih hadiths and what they consider to be reliable books of history, some of them begin to say, oh, you're a Rafidi, you're a Shi'i, you're a Khariji, you're a Mu'tazili, you're a Zaydi, etc., etc. We are not here to throw about, accusations and labels back and forth and stereotype different individuals into silence. We are here, all of us, we are here to pursue al-haq, truth and justice. That's the whole effort. That's the whole mission. One of the fuqaha, in our common Islamic history, we have fuqaha, sometimes in certain traditions referred to as imams, in the scholarly sense of the word, not in the ideological or quote-unquote political sense, but in the scholarly sense of the word. These were imams. And we have basically, in the numerical sense of the word, we have the majority of Muslims following 4 schools of Islamic fiqh, schools of thought: al-Shafi'i, al-Hanafi, al-Maliki, al-Hanbali. I don't know if we comfortably say, and we should comfortably say, the Muslims are over 2 billion people in the world. I would think an educated guess would put the number of those who traditionally consider themselves followers of one of these schools of thought to be at least 3/4, if not 4/5 of the total Muslim population in the world. And then we have in the Shi'i context, the Ithna Ashari, Ja'fari, Imami school of thought. The majority of those who think of themselves as Shi'is. And we have the Zaydi Shi'is, and those are probably about 4/5 of the rest of the Muslims. Add to that the Ibadi school of thought. Probably, I don't know, my educated guess would be, and this is another thing, and every time you try to put Muslims in a numerical factual sheet, it's elusive because we don't count ourselves. It'd be interesting for someone in the world who has the resources to try to figure out a systemic way of identifying how Muslims themselves identify themselves. But we don't have that. We never had it. And up until now, there's no one interested in knowing this. It's as if keeping this information a mystery serves everyone who's in power. And that's what we have. And some fuqaha in the course of time, they were at the level of these fuqaha that we are speaking about, more or less. There's Al-Layth ibn Sa'd, a very well known, at least among reading historian scholars and researchers. Al-Layth ibn Sa'd was at the degree and level of the other fuqaha, but his fiqh didn't survive. Have you come across anyone in the world who says, well, I follow the fiqh of Al-Layth ibn Sa'd? No one. There's another faqih who is from Bilad al-Sham, the Levant, from the area that's now Syria and Lebanon. More Lebanon than Syria. His name is Al-Awza'i. Does anyone ever hear anyone say, I'm the follower of Al-Awza'i? No one. Why? I pose that question to you. So when we come to Al-Awza'i, who was a faqih in his own right, agree with him, disagree with him? I disagree with him from what I know of him. But that doesn't mean he's not a faqih. But this is what he said. He confessed. I'm going to quote here what he said, word by word, and I'm going to translate for you what it means. ما أخذنا العطاء حتى شهدنا على الإمام علي بالنفاق وتبرأنا منه. We could not, this is what he said, ما أخذنا العطاء حتى شهدنا على الإمام علي بالنفاق وتبرأنا منه. We were not being paid until we bore witness that Imam Ali is a munafiq, and that we distanced ourselves from him, or we absolved ourselves of him. حتى تبرأنا منه. Place this statement, I want you whoever you are, whatever background you have, I want you to place this statement in your mind. A faqih is confessing to the truth. And this substantiates Al-Imam Ali's words himself. He says to his companions, سَيُعْرَضُ عَلَيْكُمْ سَبِّي وَالْبَرَاءَةُ مِنِّي. You are going to be, Imam Ali is saying to his followers, you are going to be offered to condemn me and to absolve yourselves of me. And then he goes on to say, فَإِنْ أَرَادُوكُمْ عَلَى سَبِّي فَسُبُّونِي. If they intend for you to bad mouth me, you may do that. وَإِنْ أَرَادُوكُمْ عَلَى الْبَرَاءَةِ مِنِّي فَلَا تَتَبَرَّؤُوا مِنِّي. But if they want you to absolve yourselves of me, do not do that. Do not absolve yourselves of me. Do not distance yourselves from me. فَإِنِّي لَمْ أُفَارِقْ الْإِسْلَامِ. For I have never parted from Islam. Now, some people, once again, when you present them with this type of information, they're going to begin to throw question marks. They're going to begin to throw statements out there that will have you say, this is some type of, statement that came from some weird place in Islamic history. No, wait a minute. There's a person called Al-Hafiz al-Dhahabi. Al-Dhahabi, just the word Al-Dhahabi, for those who have done their Islamic readings, know the quality of the scholar that we are speaking about. He mentioned this hadith in his book Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. This doesn't come from a Shi'i, it doesn't come from a Khariji, it doesn't come from a Mu'tazili, it doesn't come from a Sufi. It comes from a mainstream Sunni Islamic scholarly author. So doesn't that give you the impression that now is the time for us to begin to ask questions? Ask questions. And don't ask questions that are trivial. The airwaves are saturated with trivial questions and trivial answers. We want our questions to be more practical. I know this is taking a turn right now in another direction, but in the past 40 plus years, the Islamic discourse was hijacked by Saudi finances. Even Islamic movements were influenced by Saudi, Wahhabi, Salafi propaganda. Now I'm speaking this, and I want those who come from a Shi'i background to understand that as courageous as we are in exposing the damage that has been done by fanatical Sunnis, we expect enlightened Shi'is to expose the damage that is being done by fanatical, Hujjatiyya, Halabiyya, Shiraziyya type of Shi'is. We don't want this to be a voice in one chamber that has no resounding or an echo in the other chamber, or else we're going to have an imbalance here, and that imbalance is going to lead to tension, if not to more than that, as we see in the real world today. Speaking about the fuqaha, among the fuqaha, we had Abu Hanifa, who was considered the more thinking faqih, so to speak, the more rational faqih, who was presented by the fanatical Sunnis as a dal or mudil or zindiq, or a person of bad moral quality, knowing that those who follow the Hanafi school of thought are probably 1/3 of the Muslims in the world today. May Allah guide us all. May we continue this journey together. May Allah forgive us our shortcomings, enlighten us to the truth in pursuit of al-haq, truth and justice. وصلى الله على محمد وآل محمد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.